you write in your report, Top Risks 2026 report, Dr. Bremmer, that for many countries, the United States has become unpredictable and unreliable, forcing them into urgent hedging. How do you see this playing out for India in particular?
India is, of course, in a better situation than a lot of countries in the Western Hemisphere. India is an important hedge strategically for the United States with China. It's a member of the Quad, and the Quad was discussed and supported in the Trump administration's national security strategy document that we saw just a month and a bit ago. India also does not rely heavily on trade with the United States. So the U.S. doesn't have as much leverage in beating up the Indians that it does with Mexico or Canada or the Europeans. And that's significant as well. India also has very strong relations with the rest of the G7, the exception of Canada, though that's improving a little bit with the new prime minister. India particularly has strong relations with Japan. India has developed good relations with the Gulf states, as you know. India is considered a leader, in some ways the leader of the global South. China is not. China is the principal creditor to the global South and is seen as something different, even though China wants to be seen as a part of the global South. And India's challenging relations with China, Modi and Xi Jinping have done some work to try to stabilize that over the past year. So of all the countries in the world dealing with the chaos of the Americans renouncing their leadership, India strikes me as being in a strategically quite strong position. Okay. And a big piece of this is the fact that India has strong, consistent leadership and therefore a willingness and a capacity to focus on consistent economic reforms, a consistent foreign policy approach over a long period of time. Exactly what the much more powerful Americans have not been able to do. The U.S. is far more powerful than India, far wealthier, has the global reserve currency, has all of the major technologies and advancements, and yet every electoral cycle, the Americans change their mind on what the priorities are. And obviously that undermines America's strategic influence around the world.
So since you've already said that India perhaps is better placed than most nations, Dr. Bremmer, the report stresses that the United States is unwinding its own global order, just as China, India, and the Gulf states gain geopolitical weight, and that we live in a Gzero, where rules are weaker and raw power matters more. So are we to believe that it's all about might is right?
It's not all about might is right, but it's a lot more about might is right than it used to be. Now, there are a lot of countries all over the world that are very discomfited by the idea that the law of the jungle is now the rule of the road. And that's creating a lot of hedging. So if the Americans are saying we want industrial policy and you do it our way or else we're going to tariff you hard, we've also seen countries like India reach out to other countries around the world to try to accelerate their own free trade agreements, to reduce tariffs, to maintain globalization. We see the Europeans and the Canadians spending a lot more on defense and working to integrate that defense capability, their intelligence capabilities, their critical enablers with each other. So there's a lot of hedging. There's a lot of desire. We see the Chinese continuing to pay their dues to the United Nations and say, we want governance for artificial intelligence. Not surprising, since they're a fast follower to the United States. But they don't need to do that. They could say, no, we just want Chinese institutions. No, China is saying we want more influence in the IMF and the World Bank and the UN, which were originally created by the US. So I don't believe that the existence of a Gzero world, which is a geopolitical bust cycle, a recession, where the Americans aren't providing leadership, that doesn't mean that everything is suddenly law of the jungle. And let's also remember that the military order in the world is much more unipolar in America's favor. The economic order is much more multipolar. In 2025, when we were talking at the beginning of the year, we weren't talking about the Dawn Road Doctrine, we were talking about tariffs. And the United States was imposing tariffs back in April, unprecedented, hadn't seen it in almost a century, against every country around the world. But the response to that was a cost to Americans, an affordability crisis that led to New York, my own city, deciding to elect a democratic socialist, Zohran Mamdani. And Trump now recognizes that he needs to push faster to do deals and to bring down those tariffs so that he has inflation that is lower. So there still are constraints that force individual leaders, including my own president, to be more careful and cautious. But those rules apply less on the direct military front, and they apply less when we talk about artificial intelligence, which is moving so fast, and where there's really no regulation, coordination, or governance.